The USS Liberty moved through space like a wounded elephant. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge and watched the other ships in the fleet zip past them with ease. The sleek Zephyrian cruisers looked like silver arrows cutting through the darkness. The Corvin destroyers moved with grace that made them seem like they were dancing instead of flying. Even the bulky Vorthan battleships managed to look impressive as they glided through the void. The Liberty looked nothing like those ships. It was big, square, and ugly. The hull was covered in thick armor plates that stuck out at odd angles. Weapons pods dotted the surface like metal warts. The engines barely pushed the massive ship forward at half the speed of the smallest alien fighter. Commander Lisa Brooks walked up to Morrison and shook her head. She had been listening to the alien radio chatter for the past hour. The things they said about the Liberty were not kind. The Zephyrians called it a flying brick. The Corvins wondered if humans had forgotten how to build real ships. The Vorthans joked that they could walk faster than the Liberty could fly. Morrison tried not to let it bother him, but it was hard. Earth had spent 10 years building the Liberty. It was supposed to be humanity's gift to the Galactic Defense Alliance. Instead, it had become a joke that everyone told at dinner parties. The Liberty finally reached the massive space station that served as the Alliance headquarters. The docking bay was huge enough to hold a small city. Ships from dozens of different worlds sat in neat rows. The Liberty looked out of place among them, like a rusty pickup truck parked next to a row of sports cars. As they docked, Morrison could see alien crews gathering to stare at their ship. Some pointed and laughed. Others just shook their heads in disappointment. A group of young Zephyrian pilots took pictures with their communication devices, probably to show their friends back home. Admiral Henry Cross was waiting for them at the airlock. The old Altarian had gray skin and 4 arms, which he used to gesture dramatically when he spoke. His expression showed exactly what he thought of the Liberty and its crew. "Captain Morrison," Cross said in his deep voice, "welcome to the Alliance fleet. I hope your ship performs better than it looks." Morrison saluted and tried to smile. "Thank you, Admiral. The Liberty is ready to serve." Cross looked past Morrison at the airlock as if he was hoping to see a different ship behind it. "Yes, well, we will find something useful for you to do. Perhaps supply runs or escort duty for cargo ships." The words hit Morrison like a punch to the stomach. Supply runs were what you gave to ships that could not fight. Escort duty was for vessels that were too weak to handle real missions. Cross was basically saying that the Liberty was not good enough for actual combat. Lieutenant Danny Foster, the ship's weapons officer, stepped forward. He was young and eager, fresh from the academy. "Sir, the Liberty has some very advanced systems. Our weapons are—" Cross held up one of his hands to stop him. "I am sure your weapons are adequate for your intended role, Lieutenant. The Alliance appreciates Earth's contribution to our cause." The way he said contribution made it sound like Earth had donated old clothes to charity. Morrison felt his face get hot, but he kept his mouth shut. Getting angry at the Admiral would not help anything. After the meeting, Morrison and his crew walked through the station's main corridor. Aliens of all shapes and sizes filled the walkway. Some had scales, others had fur. A few floated in special suits filled with liquid. But they all had one thing in common. They stared at the human crew with a mixture of curiosity and pity. Brooks caught up with Morrison near the food court. "Sir, I know what you're thinking, but maybe Cross is right. Maybe we should focus on support roles until we prove ourselves." Morrison stopped walking and looked at her. Brooks was a good officer and a loyal friend. She had served with him for 5 years and never questioned his decisions. If she was having doubts, things were worse than he thought. "Do you really believe that, Lisa?" Brooks was quiet for a moment. "I believe in you, Captain. And I believe in the crew. But this ship, I don't know what Earth was thinking when they designed it." That night, Morrison sat alone in his quarters and read the technical specifications for the Liberty. On paper, the ship looked impressive. It had the strongest armor in the fleet. Its weapons could punch through almost any shield. The engines were built to run for decades without maintenance, but none of that mattered if the ship was too slow to reach a fight. What good was strong armor if enemies could just fly circles around you? How could you protect anyone if you could not catch up to the bad guys? Morrison's computer chimed with an incoming message. It was from his wife Karen back on Earth. She had seen the news reports about the Liberty's arrival at Alliance headquarters. The reporters were not kind. One called it humanity's embarrassing debut on the galactic stage. Another wondered if Earth should stick to making farming equipment instead of warships. Karen's message was short and sweet. I believe in you, Jake. Show them what humans can do. Morrison smiled for the first time since arriving at the station. Karen always knew exactly what to say. She reminded him why he had joined the Navy in the first place, not to impress aliens, but to protect people. The next morning brought new orders. The Liberty was assigned to patrol the Outer Rim territories. It was the kind of job they gave to ships that could not be trusted with anything important. The Outer Rim was mostly empty space with a few mining colonies and trade routes. Nothing ever happened there. Morrison gathered his crew in the main briefing room. They all looked tired and defeated. The past few days had been hard on everyone. I know this is not what we hoped for, Morrison said. I know we all wanted to be part of the main fleet, fighting alongside the best ships in the galaxy. But we are going to make the most of this assignment. We are going to show them that humans do not give up just because things get tough. Foster raised his hand. What if we never get a chance to prove ourselves, Captain? What if we spend the next 5 years guarding empty space? Morrison looked around the room at his crew. They were good people who deserved better than this. But sometimes life did not give you what you deserved. Sometimes you had to take what you could get and make it work. Then we will be the best guards of empty space in the galaxy, Morrison said, and when our chance comes, we will be ready for it. 3 months passed like a slow fever dream. The Liberty drifted through the Outer Rim territories, checking on mining stations and scanning empty space for threats that never came. The crew had settled into a routine that felt more like punishment than duty. Morrison spent his mornings reading reports about the main fleet's victories. The Zephyrian strike force had destroyed a pirate base near the Andromeda sector. A joint Corvin-Vorthon task force had stopped a smuggling operation that was selling weapons to rebels. Every day brought news of brave deeds and heroic battles that the Liberty was not part of. The crew tried to stay positive, but it was getting harder. Lieutenant Amy Carter, the ship's navigator, had started taking extra shifts just to have something to do. Foster spent hours in the weapons bay, cleaning guns that had never been fired in anger. Even Brooks had grown quiet and distant. Morrison was reviewing supply requests when the emergency alarm started screaming. The sound cut through the ship like a knife. He ran to the bridge where Carter was already at her station, her face pale with excitement and fear. Captain, we have a distress signal from the Kepler 442b mining colony, Carter said. They are under attack by a large pirate fleet. Morrison felt his heart start to pound. This was it, their first real mission. How large is large, Lieutenant? Carter checked her readings twice before answering. 47 ships, sir. Led by someone calling himself Vex Shadowclaw. The colony's defenses have already failed. They estimate 6 hours before complete overrun. Brooks arrived on the bridge and looked at the tactical display. Her expression went from hope to horror in seconds. Sir, that is 3 times our firepower, and we would be fighting alone. Morrison studied the numbers. 47 ships was a massive force. Most pirate groups had maybe 10 or 12 vessels. This Shadowclaw character had built himself a small army. The smart thing would be to call for backup and wait for the main fleet to arrive. How long until Alliance reinforcements can reach Kepler 442b? Morrison asked. Carter ran the calculations. Minimum 3 days, sir. More likely 4 or 5. Morrison closed his eyes and thought about the people on that mining colony. Kepler 442b had a population of 15,000 civilians. Men, women, children, families just trying to make a living in the cold darkness of space. In 6 hours, they would all be dead or slaves. Set course for Kepler 442b, maximum speed, Morrison ordered. Brooks stepped closer to him. Sir, are you sure about this? 47 ships against 1? Morrison looked at his crew. They were scared, but they were ready. Foster had his hand on the weapons console. Carter was already plotting their course. Even the junior officers who had never seen combat were standing straighter. We swore an oath to protect innocent people, Morrison said. It did not say anything about good odds. The Liberty changed course and began its slow journey toward the battle. Morrison used the travel time to study everything they knew about Vex Shadowclaw and his fleet. The pirate warlord was a Krex, a species known for their brutal tactics and love of violence. He had been raiding colonies for 10 years, always staying one step ahead of Alliance forces. Shadowclaw's fleet was a mix of stolen military vessels and converted cargo ships. Most of his captains were wanted criminals from a dozen different worlds. They were experienced fighters who had survived years of running battles with law enforcement. Foster pulled up the weapon profiles of the enemy ships. "Sir, most of them have standard energy shields and plasma weapons. Pretty much what every pirate uses these days." Morrison nodded. That was actually good news. The Liberty had been designed to fight conventional threats. Its weapons and armor were built specifically to counter the most common enemy systems. As they got closer to Kepler 442b, they started picking up radio chatter from the pirate fleet. The signals were not encrypted, which meant Shadowclaw was confident that no one could challenge him. Morrison listened to the transmissions and felt his anger grow. The pirates were talking about which slaves they wanted to claim. They were making bets about how long the colonists would last under torture. They discussed selling children to the worst kinds of buyers in the galaxy. These were not just criminals, they were monsters. 2 hours out from the colony, the Liberty's sensors detected the pirate fleet. They were spread out around the planet in a loose formation, taking their time with the destruction. Several mining stations were already burning. Escape pods drifted helplessly in space while pirates decided which ones to pick up. Morrison called his senior officers to the bridge. "This is what we trained for, people. I know the odds are bad, but we have some advantages they do not know about." Foster looked confused. "What advantages, sir?" Morrison smiled for the first time in months. "They are expecting us to fight like every other ship in the galaxy. Fast light trying to avoid damage, but we are not every other ship." Brooks began to understand. The Liberty was built for a different kind of war. Exactly. While they have been perfecting speed and agility, Earth has been working on something else. We are going to show them what human engineering can really do. The pirate fleet detected the Liberty when it was still an hour away. Morrison listened as their communications exploded with laughter and disbelief. They could not believe that a single ship was approaching their massive force. Some of them thought it was a mistake. Others assumed the human captain had gone insane. Shadowclaw himself came on the radio. His voice was a low growl that made Morrison's skin crawl. "Human ship, you have 30 seconds to turn around and leave. This is your only warning." Morrison opened a channel to the entire pirate fleet. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the USS Liberty. You are attacking innocent civilians. Surrender now and you will be treated according to Alliance law." The response was a wave of laughter from dozens of pirate vessels. Shadowclaw's voice cut through the noise. "You amuse me, human. One ship against my armada. I will make your death quick as a reward for your courage." Morrison looked around the bridge at his crew. They were scared but determined. These were good people who had volunteered to risk their lives for strangers they had never met. He was proud to serve with them. "All hands, this is the captain," Morrison announced over the ship's intercom. "We are about to engage a superior enemy force to protect 15,000 innocent people. This is what we signed up for. This is why we are here. Show them what the USS Liberty can do." The ship moved forward through the darkness toward the waiting pirate fleet. It was slow and ugly and looked like it had no chance of winning. But appearances could be deceiving. The pirates were about to learn that the hard way. The Liberty entered weapons range with all the grace of a falling asteroid. The pirate fleet had arranged itself in a perfect ambush formation around the mining colony. Fast attack ships positioned themselves like wolves ready to circle their prey. Heavy cruisers held the center. Their massive guns pointed at the approaching human vessel. Shadowclaw's flagship, a converted battle carrier called the Death's Head, waited behind the main line like a spider in its web. Morrison studied the tactical display and felt sweat drip down his back. 47 red dots surrounded his single green one. The computer kept calculating their chances of survival and coming up with numbers that made him sick. According to every military textbook ever written, the Liberty should turn around and run. But military textbooks were written by people who had never seen 15,000 civilians about to be murdered. "Distance to enemy fleet?" Morrison asked. Carter checked her instruments. 50,000 kilometers in closing, sir. They are spreading out to surround us." Foster had both hands on his weapons console. The young officer was trying to look calm, but Morrison could see the fear in his eyes. "Sir, should I power up our main guns?" "Not yet, Lieutenant. Let them get closer." Brooks looked at Morrison like he had lost his mind. "Sir, at this range we could at least take out a few of their scouts before they close the trap." Morrison shook his head. "We only get one chance to surprise them. We need to make it count." The pirate ships moved with practiced precision. They had done this dance dozens of times before. Fast ships would dart in to strip away the target's shields while heavy hitters moved into position for the killing blow. It was a proven tactic that had worked against every opponent they had faced. What they did not know was that the Liberty had been designed to fight a very different kind of war. Shadowclaw's voice crackled over the radio. "Human Captain, you still have time to run. My ships have not fired yet. Take your ugly little boat and leave while you can." Morrison opened a channel to respond. "The only place we are going is through your fleet, pirate." The response was a wave of laughter from dozens of pirate vessels. Morrison could hear individual voices making jokes about human stupidity and betting on how long the Liberty would last. One Crex captain claimed he could destroy the human ship with his eyes closed. The distance closed to 30,000 kilometers. The pirate formation was almost complete. In a few more minutes, the Liberty would be completely surrounded with no way to escape. Morrison watched the tactical display and waited for the perfect moment. "Sir, they are powering up weapons," Carter reported. "Multiple targeting locks detected." "Steady as she goes," Morrison said. "Foster, prepare to fire on my command." "Which targets, sir?" Morrison pointed at 3 red dots on the display. They were heavy cruisers positioned at the front of the pirate formation. Big ships with thick armor and powerful guns, the kind of targets that most captains would avoid. Those 3. Full spread, all forward batteries. Foster's hands moved over his controls with nervous energy. "Sir, those are their strongest ships. Shouldn't we target the smaller vessels first?" "The smaller vessels are not our problem, Lieutenant. Trust me." The distance dropped to 20,000 kilometers. The pirate ships were moving into their final positions. Morrison could see plasma cannons charging on the enemy vessels. Energy shields were flickering to life across the pirate fleet. In 30 seconds, they would open fire with enough concentrated firepower to destroy a small moon. Morrison had been counting on exactly that. "Fire," he ordered. The Liberty's forward batteries erupted in a blaze of light that lit up the darkness of space. But instead of the energy beams or plasma bolts that the pirates expected, the human ship unleashed something completely different. Tungsten core railgun rounds screamed across the gap between the fleets at a significant fraction of light speed. The projectiles were simple pieces of metal, but they carried more kinetic energy than most nuclear weapons. They had been designed specifically to punch through energy shields that were built to stop plasma and laser attacks. The first pirate cruiser exploded like a balloon filled with fire. Its shields, which could have deflected a dozen plasma cannons, offered no protection against solid metal moving at incredible speed. The tungsten round punched through the front armor, traveled the entire length of the ship, and exited through the engine compartment. Secondary explosions tore the vessel apart from the inside. The second cruiser tried to maneuver away from the incoming rounds, but railgun projectiles moved too fast for evasive action. The tungsten core hit the ship's main reactor and turned it into a miniature star. The explosion was so bright that other pirate vessels had to adjust their sensors to avoid being blinded. The third cruiser managed to angle its strongest armor toward the incoming round. But it did not matter. The projectile hit with enough force to crack a small asteroid. The ship's hull folded like paper around the impact point. Atmosphere and debris erupted from the wound as the vessel began to spin out of control. 3 of the pirate fleet's most powerful ships had been destroyed in the first 5 seconds of combat. The remaining pirates stared in shock at the destruction. They had been expecting a short, easy fight against an obviously inferior opponent. Instead, they had just watched their strongest vessels get torn apart by weapons they did not understand. Shadowclaw's voice roared over the radio. "What are you waiting for? Kill them!" The pirate fleet opened fire with everything they had. Plasma bolts, energy beams, and guided missiles converged on the Liberty from 36 different directions. The space around the human ship lit up like a deadly fireworks show. Morrison braced himself for impact. The next few seconds would determine whether the Liberty's designers had been brilliant or crazy. The enemy fire struck the Liberty's hull with the force of a dozen hurricanes. Plasma bolts that could melt through standard armor splashed against the human ship's plating like water against a rock. Energy beams that could cut through steel barely left scorch marks on the Liberty's surface. Brooke stared at her damage control display in amazement. "Sir, armor is holding. Minimal damage across all sections." Morrison smiled. The Liberty's armor was not just thick, it was smart. Each plate contained millions of microscopic sensors that analyzed incoming attacks and adjusted the armor's molecular structure in real time. Plasma attacks triggered one response. Energy beams triggered another. The armor literally learned how to defend itself. Foster looked up from his weapons console with wide eyes. Sir, they are hitting us with enough firepower to level a city. How are we still here? Because we were built for this, Lieutenant. Now show them what else we can do. The Liberty began to move forward into the heart of the pirate formation. Its massive bulk pushed through the enemy fire like an icebreaker cutting through frozen water. The ship was slow, but it was also unstoppable. The pirates tried to adjust their tactics. Fast attack ships darted in close to target the Liberty's engines. Heavy cruisers focused their fire on single points, hoping to overwhelm the armor through concentrated assault. Nothing worked. Every weapon that hit the Liberty only made its armor stronger. Every attack that failed demoralized the pirates more. They had built their careers on fear and intimidation. But how could you intimidate something that would not die? Morrison watched the tactical display as red dots began to blink out one by one. The Liberty's guns continued to fire with mechanical precision. Each shot found its target. Each target died. For the first time in 10 years, Vex Shadowclaw was afraid. The battle had been raging for 20 minutes, and the pirate fleet was starting to panic. Half of their ships were either destroyed or drifting helplessly with critical damage. The Liberty continued its slow advance through their formation like a mechanical death god that could not be stopped. Shadowclaw screamed orders at his remaining captains. Focus fire on their engines. Target their bridge. There has to be a weak spot somewhere. The pirates tried everything they could think of. They attacked from multiple angles at once. They used their fastest ships to ram the Liberty's hull. They even tried boarding actions, sending assault teams in armored shuttles to cut through the human ship's armor. Nothing worked. The boarding shuttles bounced off the Liberty's hull like insects hitting a windshield. The ramming attacks only succeeded in destroying the pirate ships that attempted them. The focused fire did absolutely nothing except waste ammunition. Morrison stood on the bridge and watched his crew work with calm efficiency. They had trained for this moment for years, but none of them had really believed it would come. Now that it was here, they performed like the professionals they were. Carter, bring us around to face the flagship, Morrison ordered. Foster, prepare the main battery for a full broadside. Carter adjusted their course to put them on a collision path with Shadowclaw's massive battle carrier. The Death's Head was easily 3 times the size of the Liberty, covered in weapon turrets and armored like a flying fortress. It was the kind of ship that could take on 5 normal vessels and win. But the Liberty was not a normal vessel. Brooks checked her sensors and frowned. Sir, I am reading some kind of energy buildup in their forward sections. They might be charging a superweapon. Morrison nodded. He had been expecting something like this. Desperate pirates often had desperate weapons. Let them charge whatever they want. It will not matter. The Death's Head began to glow with blue energy as massive capacitors fed power into some kind of experimental weapon system. Shadowclaw had probably stolen it from a military research facility, or bought it from black market arms dealers. The energy signature was unlike anything in the Alliance database. Sir, that weapon is putting out enough power to crack a planet, Carter said. Maybe we should change course. Morrison shook his head. Stay on target. This is what we came here to do. The Death's Head fired its superweapon just as the Liberty came within optimal range. A beam of pure energy, bright as a star, lanced across the space between the 2 ships. The weapon carried enough destructive force to vaporize a small moon. Any normal warship caught in that beam would have been reduced to atoms. The beam struck the Liberty's forward armor and simply stopped. The energy was absorbed by the ship's adaptive plating and redirected into the power grid. Instead of destroying the human vessel, Shadowclaw's ultimate weapon had just given it a massive boost of free energy. Foster looked at his power readings in amazement. Sir, all systems are showing 120% capacity. That blast just supercharged our entire ship. Morrison allowed himself a small smile. Well then, let's not waste it. Fire all weapons. The Liberty unleashed the full fury of its arsenal. Railgun rounds, guided missiles, particle beams, and plasma cannons all fired at once. The combined salvo hit the Death's Head with enough force to shatter a small asteroid. Shadowclaw's flagship, which had survived 100 battles, cracked in half like a broken toy. Secondary explosions rippled along its hull as ammunition stores detonated. The massive ship began to list to one side as its artificial gravity failed. The remaining pirate vessels saw their leader's flagship dying and lost all will to fight. Some tried to flee. Others transmitted desperate surrender signals. A few simply powered down their weapons and waited to be captured, but Morrison was not finished yet. "Carter, how many pirate ships are still operational?" Carter checked her sensors. 14 ships, sir. Most are trying to escape." "Foster, can we catch them?" The young weapons officer grinned. "Sir, I have been waiting my whole career for this moment." The Liberty began to transform. Sections of the hull that had looked like simple armor plating suddenly opened like flower petals. Hidden weapon bays emerged from concealed compartments. Missile tubes extended from recessed ports. The ugly, blocky ship revealed its true nature as the most heavily armed vessel ever built by human hands. The pirates who were trying to escape found themselves facing a wall of incoming fire. Guided missiles hunted them down with relentless precision. Railgun rounds picked off their engines to prevent escape. Particle beams disabled their weapon systems. Within 10 minutes, the entire pirate fleet was either destroyed or disabled. The space around Kepler 442b was filled with debris and drifting hulks. 47 ships had challenged the Liberty. 0 had survived the encounter. Morrison opened a channel to the mining colony. "Kepler 442b, this is Captain Morrison of the USS Liberty. The pirate threat has been eliminated. You are safe." The response came immediately, filled with tears and gratitude. "Liberty, this is Colony Administrator Peter Walsh. We cannot thank you enough. You saved 15,000 lives today." Morrison felt a warm glow of satisfaction. This was why he had joined the Navy. This was what made all the training and sacrifice worthwhile. Brooks walked over to stand beside him. "Sir, we are receiving multiple distress calls from other systems. Word about Shadowclaw's defeat is spreading fast. Every pirate in the sector is making a run for it." Morrison looked at the tactical display. The Outer Rim territories were lighting up with emergency signals as other pirate groups panicked and tried to escape before the Liberty could reach them. The ship that had been mocked as too slow to catch anyone was suddenly the most feared vessel in known space. "Set course for the nearest distress call," Morrison ordered. "It looks like we have more work to do." As the Liberty turned toward its next target, Morrison realized that everything had changed. The slow, ugly ship that no one had wanted was about to become the most famous vessel in the galaxy. The crew that had been relegated to patrol duty was about to become legends. Admiral Cross was going to have some very interesting reports to read when the Liberty returned to headquarters. Morrison wondered what the old Altarian would think when he learned that his adequate human ship had just destroyed the largest pirate fleet in Alliance. History, the thought made Morrison smile as the Liberty disappeared into hyperspace, hunting for its next prey. The galaxy was about to learn what human engineering could really accomplish, and pirates everywhere were about to have very bad dreams about a slow, ugly ship that had turned their worst nightmare into reality. News of the Liberty's victory spread through the galaxy faster than light. Within hours of the battle at Kepler 442b, every major news network was broadcasting the same incredible story. A single human warship had destroyed 47 pirate vessels without taking any serious damage. The slow, ugly ship that everyone had mocked had accomplished something that seasoned Alliance commanders thought was impossible. Morrison sat in his quarters and watched the news reports with a mixture of pride and amazement. The reporters were calling it the most decisive naval victory in recent history. Military experts were analyzing the battle footage and trying to understand how one ship had defeated an entire fleet. The most interesting reactions came from the alien species who had dismissed human technology. Zephyrian admirals were requesting detailed specifications for human armor systems. Corvin engineers wanted to study the Liberty's weapon designs. Even the proud Vorthans were asking questions about human ship construction techniques. A soft chime indicated an incoming message. Morrison opened the communication channel and found himself looking at Admiral Cross. The old Altarian looked like he had aged 10 years in the past day. "Captain Morrison," Cross said quietly, "I owe you an apology. I was wrong about your ship and your crew." Morrison tried to look modest. "Thank you, Admiral. We were just doing our job." "No, Captain. What you did was far beyond any reasonable expectation. 47 ships." Cross shook his head in wonder. "How many casualties did you take?" 0 dead, sir. We have 3 crew members with minor injuries from console feedback during the battle. Our medical officer treated them with basic first aid." Cross was quiet for a long moment. "Captain, I am reassigning the Liberty to the Alliance Strike Force. You will be working directly with our most elite units from now on." Morrison felt his heart skip a beat. The Alliance strike force was made up of the best ships and crews in the galaxy. It was the assignment that every naval officer dreamed of receiving. Sir, we are honored to accept. The honor is ours, Captain. Welcome to the big leagues. After the call ended, Morrison walked to the bridge where his crew was celebrating their victory. Foster was telling the story of the battle to anyone who would listen. Carter was fielding congratulations from navigator friends throughout the fleet. Even Brooks, usually so serious, was smiling and laughing with the junior officers. Morrison called for attention. Listen up, everyone. I just received word from Admiral Cross. The Liberty has been assigned to the Alliance Strike Force. The bridge erupted in cheers. Strike Force assignment was what they had all hoped for when they first joined the crew. It meant working with the best ships, facing the most dangerous threats, and making a real difference in the galaxy. But Morrison held up his hand for quiet. This is a great honor, but it also means greater responsibility. We are going to be held to a higher standard now. Everyone will be watching us to see if our victory was luck or skill. Foster raised his hand. Sir, what do you think? Was it luck or skill? Morrison looked around the bridge at his crew. These were good people who had trained hard and done their jobs with courage and dedication. They deserved credit for their success. It was skill, Lieutenant, and determination, and good old-fashioned human stubbornness. Over the next few weeks, the Liberty's reputation continued to grow. Pirates throughout the Outer Rim territories abandoned their bases and fled to distant systems. The mere rumor that the human ship was in the area was enough to send criminal fleets running for cover. Morrison and his crew found themselves celebrities wherever they went. When they docked at space stations, crowds gathered to see the famous ship. Children pressed against viewing windows to catch a glimpse of the vessel that had become known as the Iron Ghost. The nickname had started as a joke among Zephyrian pilots. They said the Liberty moved like a ghost because it was so slow, but after the battle at Kepler 442b, the name took on a different meaning. The Iron Ghost was something that appeared out of nowhere to destroy the enemies of peace and justice. Morrison received a personal message from Earth congratulating him and his crew. The President herself recorded a speech praising their courage and service. Defense contractors were already building new ships based on the Liberty's design. Soon there would be an entire fleet of human battleships protecting the galaxy. But the most meaningful recognition came from the people they had saved. Colony administrators sent thank you messages. Grateful families recorded video letters. Children drew pictures of the Liberty defeating the bad guys. Morrison kept all of these messages in a special file on his personal computer. The Liberty's first strike. Force mission came 3 months after Kepler 442b. Intelligence had discovered a secret base where slavers were holding thousands of kidnapped civilians. The base was heavily defended and located in a dangerous asteroid field. It would take a special kind of ship to reach it. Morrison stood on the bridge as they approached the target. The asteroid field stretched out before them like a three-dimensional maze of floating rocks. Any normal ship would have to move slowly and carefully to avoid collision. The Liberty's thick armor and powerful engines let it take a more direct approach. Sir, I am reading multiple weapon signatures from the base, Carter reported. They know we are coming, Morrison nodded. Word of the Iron Ghost had reached every criminal organization in the galaxy. They would be ready for a fight. Foster, prepare all weapons. Brooks, damage control teams to stations. Carter, take us in. The Liberty plowed through the asteroid field like an icebreaker cutting through frozen water. Rocks that would have destroyed smaller ships bounced off its armored hull like raindrops. The slavers opened fire with everything they had, but their weapons were no match for human engineering. The battle lasted exactly 18 minutes. When it was over, the slaver base was a cloud of expanding debris, and 3,000 people were free to return to their families. As they flew away from the destroyed base, Morrison reflected on how much had changed since their first day at Alliance headquarters. The crew that had been embarrassed by alien laughter was now the most respected unit in the fleet. The ship that had been called a flying brick was now the terror of criminals everywhere. Foster interrupted his thoughts. Sir, we are receiving a priority message from Alliance Command. They want us to investigate reports of illegal weapons testing in the Vega system. Morrison smiled. Another mission. Another chance to prove that humans belonged among the stars. The Liberty might be slow and ugly, but it got the job done. Set course for Vega, Lieutenant. Let's go show them what the Iron Ghost can do. As the Liberty disappeared into hyperspace, heading for its next adventure, Morrison knew that they had accomplished something special. They had not just won a battle or saved some lives. They had changed the way the galaxy thought about humanity. Earth was no longer the new kid trying to prove itself. It was a major power with technology and tactics that even the oldest civilizations respected, and it had all started with one slow, ugly ship that refused to give up. The Iron Ghost had become exactly what its name suggested, a legend that would haunt the dreams of evil beings throughout the galaxy. And Morrison and his crew were just getting started.